You have seen her face 100 times, even if you never knew her name. Kathleen Freeman was everywhere. She lit up sitcoms, cracked jokes in comedies, and even lent her voice to cartoons. She had the kind of presence that made you sit up and take notice, even if she was only on screen for a few seconds. She was the unforgettable housekeeper, the cranky teacher, the nosy neighbor, always stealing the scene. Yet as quickly as she appeared in everything from the Beverly Hillbillies to the Blues Brothers, her name was erased from headlines. So how does someone so instantly recognizable, so woven into the fabric of American television and film, simply vanish from public memory? And why do so few people know what really happened in the final chapter of her life? As it turns out, Freeman was keeping a secret, actually more than one. Behind the sharp delivery and booming laugh was a deeply private woman, one who spent her life protecting the things Hollywood was never ready to accept. She worked until the very end, refusing to let anyone see her suffer. And when she finally left the stage, it was as quietly as she had lived. But her story? That is anything but quiet. It is layered, heartbreaking, and long overdue for the spotlight. From her mysterious personal life to a shocking final act, what happened to Kathleen Freeman will leave you absolutely speechless. Before she was stealing scenes in Hollywood, Kathleen Freeman was stealing them on stage, literally. Born in Chicago in 1923, Freeman's first taste of show business came through vaudeville. Her parents were performers, and young Kathleen was introduced to the spotlight almost as soon as she could walk. She toured with her family in comedy sketches and musical acts, studying not just performance, but timing, the kind that turned an average moment into something unforgettable. Later, she enrolled at the University of California, Los Angeles, to study classical piano. But that carefully trained musical path was not where she belonged. The real stage, the one filled with jokes, chaos, and character, pulled her in. Her earliest film roles appeared in the 1940s, but by the 1950s, casting directors took notice. Freeman had a rare gift. She could walk into a scene with 5 major stars and still be the one the audience remembered. With her sharp voice, rubbery facial expressions, and precise comedic instincts, she became the go-to woman for nosy neighbors, housekeepers, and secretaries. The roles were small, but her impact was huge. She popped up in film after film, a stern nurse in the Blues Brothers, a meddling assistant in The Nutty Professor, a suspicious maid in The Fly. Even with limited screen time, Freeman found ways to make the audience laugh and care. But that visibility came at a cost. Hollywood saw her as reliable, funny, and one-dimensional. She was often typecast and rarely offered roles with emotional weight or narrative power. The industry had a place for her, but only in a box. Still, she pushed through. Freeman took what she was given and elevated it. She could spin warmth into even the crankiest lines. Directors loved her for her timing, her energy, and her ability to save a flat scene. But close friends noticed the toll. Freeman sometimes joked about being Hollywood's favorite crank, though it was clear the repetition wore thin. She had more to offer, and she knew it. But the part of herself she longed to share most, the one no casting agent ever saw, would stay hidden far longer than anyone realized. By the time Kathleen Freeman crossed paths with Lucille Ball, she was already a seasoned character actress. But working with one of television's most powerful women pushed her into a brighter spotlight and into one of the most quietly complicated working relationships of her career. Freeman first caught Ball's attention in the late 1950s. Known for her sharp delivery and comedy instincts, Freeman had the exact qualities Ball admired. Ball, a pioneer in a male-dominated industry, built her empire by surrounding herself with professionals who could keep pace, and Freeman delivered. She appeared multiple times on I Love Lucy, then became a recurring face on The Lucy Show and Here's Lucy. Their chemistry on screen was electric. Freeman usually played tough, skeptical, or strong-willed characters who pushed back on Lucy's antics, and fans loved it. But behind the scenes, things were not always as smooth. Lucille Ball had a reputation for being meticulous and demanding. She valued control and structure, and she expected the same from her cast. Freeman, while equally professional, was known for her blunt honesty. According to crew members, the two respected each other, but tension was not uncommon. Freeman did not flatter. She did not play the Hollywood game, and that independent streak sometimes clashed with Ball's need to direct every detail. Still, Ball kept bringing her back. Freeman was simply too good to leave out. She could take a weak scene and inject it with energy. Yet over time, Freeman began to feel the limits. She was being used, reliably, but never credited the way she deserved. She never complained publicly, but friends later said she often felt like a tool, appreciated but never acknowledged. While Ball built a legacy as an entertainment icon, Freeman remained in the shadow of that success, even while contributing to it directly. What frustrated Freeman most was not ego, it was potential. She wanted roles with depth, with heart, but each time she returned, the scripts handed her the same loud, funny, one-note women. She kept showing up and delivering because she loved the craft. But the silence about her own worth grew louder with every return. And what she wanted most, the part of her the industry never saw, was still hidden, waiting behind the curtain. Kathleen Freeman spent over half a century in front of the camera, but almost none of her personal life made it into the spotlight. She was bold and loud on screen, yet off-screen, she was deeply private. She never married. She never spoke publicly about relationships, and when interviewers nudged toward personal questions, she would brush them off with a joke or a clever pivot. But there was one name that quietly followed her through the years: Helen Ramsey. Helen was not famous. She was not in the industry, but she and Freeman shared a home for decades. And according to friends, a life. Some believed they were partners. Others called them companions. Freeman never said. In fact, she never said anything. The two women lived together, traveled together, and kept their bond out of public view. In mid-century Hollywood, that kind of silence was common, and often necessary. Studios controlled image with an iron grip. Actors were expected to be relatable, clean-cut, and, most of all, traditional. Anything that strayed from the public's comfort zone could derail a career. Freeman, a woman who had already been typecast and limited by the system, likely understood the cost of being honest. So she protected what mattered. No red carpets, no interviews, no declarations, just quiet, shared time behind the scenes. Some might see that as sad, but others see quiet bravery. She loved who she loved without explanation, without apology. She did not perform that part of her life for anyone. Even after her passing, there was no tell-all, no secret diary, no bombshell interview. Freeman took her privacy seriously, and in that silence, she made a statement. Not everything had to be public. Not everything had to be sacrificed. Her story reminds us how many actors hid their truth, not from shame, but from survival. She carved out a space where she could live freely, but even if quietly. She lived on her own terms in an industry that often forced everyone into a mold. But there was still one place where Freeman never had to hide, where she could be bold, loud, and fully herself. And that was not Hollywood. It was a stage she came to late in life and completely conquered. After decades of scene-stealing roles in film and television, most performers her age would have quietly stepped out of the spotlight. But Kathleen Freeman was not most performers. When Hollywood started to slow down for her, offering fewer roles and even fewer that did anything new, she did not retire. Instead, she turned to the stage. And in doing so, she reignited her career in a way that no one expected. By the late 1990s, Freeman was in her mid-70s. While most actresses were being phased out or offered only background roles as grandmothers or caretakers, Freeman walked onto a Broadway stage and demanded the audience's attention. And they gave it to her. Her role in the hit musical The Full Monty was bold, brassy, and unforgettable. As Jeanette Burmeister, the sarcastic, tough-talking rehearsal pianist, Freeman stole every scene she was in. The role was tailor-made for her timing, her edge, and her voice. It was like someone had finally written a character not just for her type, but for her soul. Audiences roared with laughter. Critics praised her performance. And in 2001, she was nominated for a Tony Award for Best Featured Actress in a Musical at the age of 78. It was one of the crowning moments of her career, a recognition that had eluded her through decades of thankless roles and uncredited brilliance. Behind the curtain, Freeman was just as fierce. Castmates described her as lightning in a bottle, energetic, sharp, and fearless. She was known to poke fun at herself, tease her co-stars, and keep everyone on their toes. But she was also deeply professional. Even at nearly 80, she never missed a rehearsal, never flubbed a cue, never showed up without being fully prepared. And she did it all while carrying a devastating secret. What very few people knew at the time was that Freeman had been diagnosed with lung cancer during the production. She kept the news quiet, even from some of her closest colleagues, and insisted on continuing with the show. She knew that stepping away would mean losing not just the role, but the final act of her entire life's work, and she was not going to let that happen. She once told a co-star, "As long as I can walk, talk, and make people laugh, I am showing up." And she did. Through the pain, the fatigue, and the weight of knowing time was running out, Freeman delivered night after night of unforgettable performances. For her, the stage was not just work. It was sanctuary. It was the one place where no one could tell her she was too old, too loud, or too different. It was where she got to be fully seen and finally fully celebrated. But even as the applause rang out each night, her condition worsened. And when the curtain finally fell for the last time, it happened faster than anyone expected. For someone who made a career out of unforgettable exits, Kathleen Freeman's final departure caught nearly everyone off guard. While her body was fighting a brutal illness behind the scenes, her presence on stage remained as strong as ever. She showed up, delivered her lines with punch and precision, hit her marks, and brought the house down with laughter, night after night. No one watching her in The Full Monty would have guessed that she was suffering. That was how she wanted it. Freeman's lung cancer diagnosis was not just private. It was hidden. She told only a few close friends. And even then she downplayed it. She refused to talk about pain, refused to let it define her final months. For a woman who had spent her entire life keeping the deepest parts of herself locked away, it made sense that she would do the same with her illness. She did not want pity. She did not want headlines. She wanted to work. But by August of 2001, the toll became too great. Her energy had begun to dip, and for the first time she missed a performance. Those closest to her knew something was wrong, but when they asked, she brushed it off. "Just a cold," she said. "I'll be back." She never returned to the stage. Kathleen Freeman passed away on August 23, 2001, at the Motion Picture and Television Country House and Hospital in Woodland Hills, California. She was 78 years old. Her death sent a ripple through the theater community and among her peers in Hollywood. Not because she was a household name, but because she had quietly become a legend in the spaces that mattered. Her Full Monty co-stars were stunned. Many of them had no idea she had even been sick. One cast member later said, "She gave us everything and never asked for anything back." For them, her death was not just the loss of a great actress, but the loss of someone who had reminded them what true dedication looked like. Tributes poured in, not from tabloids or national headlines, but from fellow actors, directors, and comedians who had worked with her across generations. Jerry Lewis, who had cast Freeman in 11 of his films, reportedly broke down when he heard the news. To him, she had been more than a supporting player. She had been the heart of many of his best comedic moments. But outside of the industry, Freeman's passing barely made a dent in public awareness. There was no media frenzy, no lengthy retrospectives, no viral clips celebrating her decades of work. She was mourned quietly, remembered mostly by those who knew just how much she had given and how little she had ever received in return. It was the kind of exit Freeman might have preferred. No spectacle, no spotlight, just a quiet bow after a lifetime of performance. But even in death, Freeman was still being underestimated because her legacy, though overlooked by many, was not finished yet. In the years after Kathleen Freeman's death, the spotlight she had worked so hard to earn dimmed almost entirely. Her name stopped appearing in credits. Her image rarely showed up in Hollywood tributes. She did not become the subject of documentaries or retrospective specials. No awards shows honored her with lifetime achievement reels. It was as if the industry had quietly turned the page and left her on the margins of its memory. But Freeman's work never stopped reaching people. Even now, you can catch her face popping up in reruns of classic television shows. You will find her in old comedies, family movies, even animated series. Her presence lingers like a familiar voice from another room, warm, sharp, and just a little bit outrageous. The kind of voice you might not notice at first, but one you never forget once you do. Yet her legacy is something deeper than just face recognition. Freeman represents an entire generation of performers who made Hollywood run, but rarely got the recognition they deserved. She was part of the glue that held scenes together. The timing, the energy, the spark that turned average dialogue into unforgettable moments. She was the reason a laugh landed, a punchline worked, or a transition felt smooth. But because she was not a leading lady, because she was not a starlet or a headliner, the industry treated her as expendable. That is the tragedy of Hollywood's memory. It is selective, flashy, often cruel. The people who show up do the work, carry the load, and make the stars look good. They are rarely the ones whose names survive. And Kathleen Freeman was one of the greatest of them. Her story forces us to reconsider who we celebrate. Do we only remember the people who got the biggest paychecks, the most magazine covers, the flashiest scandals, or should we also honor the ones who gave decades of their lives to entertaining us, who made millions laugh without ever becoming millionaires themselves? To her friends and co-stars, Freeman was irreplaceable. She was the actor you always wanted on your call sheet. She was the person you trusted to save a scene when the script fell flat. She was the one who never showed up late, never phoned it in, and never took the easy route, even when no one was watching. And maybe that is what makes her legacy even more powerful. She never asked to be famous. She just asked to work and to do it well. She showed up, delivered, and moved on over and over again for 50 years. So yes, Hollywood may have forgotten her, but we do not have to. In fact, remembering Kathleen Freeman, really remembering her, is one way to honor the thousands of other artists like her. The background players, the comedic sidekicks, the character actors who gave everything and asked for nothing. Because without them, the stars would not shine nearly as bright. But Freeman's story does not just end in quiet reflection. There is still one more chapter, the part that reveals just how much Hollywood never truly understood her or what she sacrificed just to keep going. Throughout her life, Kathleen Freeman did what she was told. She hit her marks, delivered her lines, and played the part. Not just on screen, but off. She kept her private world quiet, gave the public what they wanted, and rarely asked for more. But behind that polished image was a truth. Hollywood never wanted to face, and maybe still is not ready to. Freeman worked for over 50 years in an industry that depended on her yet rarely celebrated her. She made stars look good, carried scenes on her back, and made scripts funnier than they had any right to be. But she was expected to stay in the background, to be funny, reliable, and invisible. While doing that, she gave up pieces of herself. Her relationship with Helen Ramsey was kept in the shadows, not because it lacked meaning, but because honesty could have cost her everything. In those days, being openly different was still seen as dangerous. So Freeman did what many had to do. She stayed quiet, even as that silence chipped away at her. Imagine living like that for decades, loving someone deeply but never publicly, giving everything to your craft but never being honored by name, and never complaining, because you knew that stepping out of line might mean disappearing altogether. Freeman's story is not just about one woman. It is about every actor who worked tirelessly and never got the spotlight. Every performer who lived a double life just to survive. Every artist who was never allowed to be whole in public. But Freeman did something remarkable. Even without recognition, she delivered again and again, because she believed in the work, she believed in laughter, and she believed in showing up, no matter what. So the next time you see her in a rerun or an old film, remember, that woman in the background was not background at all. She was the reason the scene worked. She was Kathleen Freeman, the woman who gave everything and never asked for credit. And maybe now it is finally time she got it.